Mr. Sensenbrenner is right. These are certainly both cases and legislation that, one, we're appalled at with the case studies that we have seen, and legislation that we seek in a bipartisan manner to solve that exploitation. I rise in support of H.R. 159, the Stop Exploitation Through Trafficking Act of 2015. The Stop Exploitation Through Trafficking Act is another weapon in the war against sex trafficking in our country. Madam Speaker, we are truly at war. As we stand here today, some child is being sex trafficked, some run away from their family, not being able to be found, not finding a place of refuge, is falling into the deadly hands, if you will, of someone who will take advantage of them almost for the rest of their lives. In Houston, I met women who had engaged or had been subjected to that in the early part of their life, and they will tell you how it follows them for a long, long time, subjecting themselves to drugs and alcohol to eliminate the pain. This bill contains important victim-based initiatives to help combat sex trafficking. One of those initiatives, the National Safe Harbor Law, is essential to making sure that victims of sex trafficking are not criminalized, but instead are diverted to child protective services. Only 12 states have safe harbor laws for minor victims of sex trafficking. That is far too few. Obviously, we need all 50 states to have this safe harbor. My colleagues, there's no such thing as a child prostitute. There are only child victims of rape. Children cannot give consent. There is no such thing as a child prostitute. Likewise, it is illegal for adults to have sex with children who by their very age are under the age of consent. Sex with a minor, again, is rape. The seriousness of the offense is not diminished by having the John pay for the sex, making him feel good. It is still rape, and it's time we stop referring to the customer, the person having sex with a child, with such a polite title as a John. In addition, we must label those who provide the Johns with children, with minors, as what they are: horrific and horrible and vile criminals. The person who is the John is a rapist, a child rapist. We must punish those who prey on the vulnerable, and that includes not only the pimps and the traffickers, but also the rapists. On the other hand, we must not continue to victimize the victims in an effort to help their recovery. This bill empowers victims with a national hotline to request help. The importance of this national hotline must not be underestimated. In my earlier statement, I spoke of a field hearing that I convened in Houston as a member of the Homeland Security Committee last March. During that hearing, Mr. McCullen, the chief of the Houston Police Department, testified. An 18-year-old female victim of human trafficking contacted the National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline asking for help to escape her violent pimp. The young victim had been forced to have sex with a John who ended up stabbing her and leaving without paying any money. Stabbing. She, fearful and wanting to get the money. A whole horrible situation. While her injuries were not life-threatening, she did require medical attention for her injuries. However, the pimp refused to take her to get medical treatment, and she owed him until she paid the money she owed him to make up the money that the previous John did not pay. Vice Human Trafficking Unit personnel received the information from hotline personnel, were able to contact, locate, and rescue the young female, and also arrest the pimp and charge him with felony compelling of prostitution. Madam Speaker, I wish there was a harsher charge, but good for the local law enforcement. Madam Speaker, this story ends well. The young victim was reunited with family members that same day. This case serves as a great example of how law enforcement and non-governmental organizations can successfully work together to not only rescue victims of human trafficking, but also arrest the perpetrators of this crime and get them off the street and away from our other victims who are still out there. H.R. 159 also helps victims obtain restitution, and this is what I like. It puts them back on the right track by making them or giving them eligibility for the Job Corps program, where we've seen lives turn around. It wants to say to them that you are valuable, you are worthy, and you have a future. This bill will help ensure that all victims of sex trafficking are treated as victims in every state and every jurisdiction. For these reasons, I join with my colleague, Mr. Sensenbrenner, and urge my colleagues to support this legislation as well. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
And the gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's my pleasure to yield 3 minutes to the distinguished lady from Wisconsin, Ms. Gwen Moore, who has championed these causes.
The gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank the gentlelady from Texas and thank the gentleman from Wisconsin. I rise today in support of H.R.159, the Stop Exploitation Through Trafficking Act, which has been so diligently pushed through the superb partnership of Congressman Paul Erickson of Minnesota. It has been just a thrill to partner with him throughout this process. And this is a bipartisan collaboration because this is a bipartisan, unfortunate problem. And solving the problem of sexual exploitation of children will require work on all of our parts because it is a financial boom. People become multi-millionaires in this illicit trade. The gentlelady from Texas, who has worked so diligently to combat sex trafficking in places like Nigeria, and I joined with her on that initiative. It is very disheartening to know that right here within our own borders, the FBI estimates that in the United States of America, at least 100,000 children are currently trafficked, and another 200,000 are right on the cusp. They're at risk of sexual exploitation. And these victims are not women of the night, sexualized women who are doing it of their own free will. No, these victims, the average age is age 13. You heard me right, Madam Speaker. I said age 13. And it is an embarrassing statistic and data, and it is embarrassing to report that my own hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has become known as a sex trafficking hub for both children and adults. Why in 2013 alone, just on a random day, the FBI did a sweep and rescued 10 juvenile girls from sex traffickers in Milwaukee. And trafficking is just all too common in communities across the coast, from urban settings, rural settings, suburban settings, from coast to coast. Predators victimize vulnerable young people, such as those in the foster care system. They prey upon those living in poverty. But what we do know is that they also seek out higher income children, going after those children who may have problems in their own homes. Some are LGBT identified. There is no safe harbor for children unless we create it through laws such as this. To address this victimization, the solutions, thank you. I would yield.
Gentlelady from Texas.
An additional 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Gentlelady's recognized.
I'm proud of this legislation. I am pleased to co-sponsor it, and I urge all my colleagues to support H.R. 159. And I yield back.
The
Thank you.
gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Texas reserves, and the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, may I inquire how many more speakers the gentlewoman from Texas has?
We have no additional speakers. I'm prepared to close.
Okay.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we've all come today with a, and this is the wrong one, with a important project, and that is to help save our children. And I wouldn't want to leave on this very important bill that talks about saving our children from sex trafficking to let our colleagues know that we want every possible act of human trafficking to be reported at 1-866-347-2423. And we want those who are victims to know that they can seek help too at 1-888-373-7888. The statement we are making is that we're doing everything we can to extinguish and eliminate this heinous tragedy in our country. With that, I ask my colleagues to support this legislation and to recognize that we must stop exploitation through trafficking. And I support and ask my colleagues to support H.R.159. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady from Texas yields back the balance of her time, and the gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance.